Hello, everybody. Sage Rosenfels here. Today, I've got a great guest, JD Scholten. He is a representative from the first district in Sioux City, Iowa, in the Iowa House of Representatives, and he's an old friend. And we had a great discussion covering his race against Steve King a couple times in Northwest Iowa. We talked about baseball. I played baseball in Nebraska, and of course, we got into gun violence, which is a more recent tragedy in the U.S. and able some steps that we can help try to fix that issue. So we talked about a range of subjects. I thought it was a great podcast. Have a listen.
From the Channel Seed Studios, this is the Sage Rosenfels Experience, exclusively on Iowa Everywhere.
I love the Jamaican music there at the end. I was digging that. I think that's a new one this week. This is Sage Rosenfels. You are at the Sage Rosenfels Experience podcast on the Iowa Everywhere Network. Thank you for listening. Thanks for coming on. Today I have a special guest. I'll get to him in a second, but a few years ago, there was a man running for Congress in Northwest Iowa. He was one of the representatives. Iowa usually has about 4 representatives. I think they always have 4. I think when I was a kid, they had 6. But this guy named JD Scholten was running against him. I didn't know who JD Scholten was, but you're through the world of probably Twitter, reached out to him and wanted to try to help him with his campaign. I drove over to Ames, Iowa, and he gave a little speech at the library. And he and I have sort of become friends over the years. The most important thing of all of it, though, probably less of what he has said over the years and what he's fighting for in these things, is where I really got to appreciate him was actually on the basketball court. We went over to the Lead Rec Center on the Iowa State campus. There's all sorts of basketball courts and running tracks and workout rooms. And we played basketball for about 2 hours, I would say. Probably the last time I played basketball like that. I think we won. We were like 5-0. We had a good team. JD bought some buddies. And but his style of play was very similar to mine. As a high school basketball player, we could both shoot the 3 decently, pretty good passers, unselfish, could rebound, put the ball on the floor, had a similar style of game. And sort of ever since, I was like, if this guy, if I like a guy that the way he plays basketball, I think I might like him as maybe some sort of politician or maybe some sort of teacher or something else. And so ever since, I've been able to follow JD over the years in his travels and his races and his work. And I'm really excited to have him on today. So JD Scholten, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. You're the second person who's actually supported my campaign because of my basketball skills. The first one, we had East High School in Sioux City where I graduated from. We had alumni tournament, and one of the I got paired with my buddy who had a kid, so I played with his kid and his buddies. And I was with her dad's age, I guess. And one of the moms on the team said, "Hey, I'm a lifelong Republican, but I just through how JD plays basketball, I would vote for him." So,
I mean, it's a real thing. It's a real thing because we all know. I mean, sports are an interesting aspect of life, and there's a realness to it, right? You can't really fake your way through. And if you're good, you're good. If you're selfish, you're selfish. If you're a guy who shoots the ball all the time, but they never go in, and you're not a good passer. You're all these things. I feel like you learn a lot about a person sort of through sports, through the, you're on the same team or even on an opposing team. Some of the guys I respected the most were on opposing teams, and I just love the way they play, the way they competed, and they really should beyond the BS of what sports, many times is. So, yeah, I really enjoy.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say that was one thing that, like, when you're on a team that, especially a team that other teams hate to play because they know like how you can just grind them out or just whatever your style of play. Yeah. I think that's one of the best compliments, and it's just one of those things. I know my senior year in college got to play at University of Nebraska, and everybody I played in pro ball who we played against, they all said the same thing. We hated playing you guys, and it's a badge of honor.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Well, after so you grew up in Northwest Iowa. Actually, I'm sure I'm gonna go through your Wikipedia a little bit.
Okay.
Born in Ames. Born in Ames, Iowa.
Really hospital.
And according to Wikipedia, at the age of 4, you moved to Sioux City, and you moved to Sioux City, and then you went to community college, right, and pitched.
No, I
No,
went to Morningside.
Morningside,
Yeah,
not a good house.
my dad was a coach there. So when I was born, my dad was a grad assistant on Iowa State's baseball team.
Okay.
So that's how old I am. They still had baseball back then.
So you had sports in your genes for generations,
Oh,
obviously.
absolutely.
So you
Yeah.
so you start school there, playing baseball, but you were a multi-sport athlete in high school.
Yep.
Played
I
played
did.
basketball, anything else?
Yeah. Nope. Split this season 6 months, 6 months. It was fantastic.
Nice. Well, I ended up going to Nebraska.
Hmm.
And Nebraska's got a very good baseball program. I live in Omaha. It's a big deal over there. They haven't been as good lately, but generally they're a very, very good program and compete in the Big Ten conference and of course sometimes have made it to the College World Series. It's been a bit, but obviously being in Omaha, it's just sort of a baseball state. I feel
Yep.
like Nebraska is.
Well,
Um,
I mean, it's a football state, but or used to be.
it's a football state. It's a football state that they care about the college
They
team.
do. They do. And so we were part of the second team ever to make it to the College World Series.
Yeah,
And
but on top of it, they only have a couple athletes a year who actually play at Nebraska. I mean, they really
oh,
have to get a lot of the recruits from somewhere else. But as kids, a lot of kids
right.
from Nebraska, in the local level, little league and those things, they end up, playing at Nebraska or other schools and other colleges. It's just it feels like it's a baseball state, sort of like Minnesota is sort of a hockey state in a
Yeah.
way.
Well, I will like Omaha is great baseball. And I mean, you look at the state of Iowa, we have one Division 1 team anymore. Nebraska has three with uh, Omaha and Creighton and Nebraska Lincoln. So that's a lot to ask for a smaller state like that, but they can produce a lot of talent.
Yeah. So after you leave Lincoln,
Yep.
went to the College World Series. Did
Yep.
you pitch in the College World Series?
Warmed up, never got in.
Oh,
We were 0-2. We lost. The state of South Carolina did it to us. We lost to both Clemson in the first round and then South Carolina.
sort of like the Moonlight Graham of the College World Series almost.
Sure.
And back then it would have been at Rosenblatt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was awesome.
Different vibe down there by the
Yeah.
zoo. It's good you didn't pitch because pitchers didn't fare well down there. It was
Oh,
like 18-15 games, southwest winds
yeah,
blowing out there, and that stadium faced sort of northeast. And Nebraska in the summertime, more often than not, you get these like warm southern winds from Oklahoma and Kansas coming up, and the bats were like unlimited amounts of pop that those things could have. And the game was back then when the Miami Hurricanes seemed like they were like one of the best teams or the best team. Them and LSU, it
yep.
was home run derby. So maybe it was best you didn't get in, but you end up parlaying that and all that work, and your career didn't stop. You played
Yeah,
Canada, you played overseas. Tell me about those experiences.
yeah. So I didn't get drafted. I didn't get a lot of innings at Nebraska. So I even though I led the team in ERA, but ended up playing professionally, both first in the Canadian Baseball League, which didn't last a whole season, and so halfway through the season, I had to find a new team, and I went home, and luckily, in Sioux City, where I'm from, we have a minor league team, an independent baseball team, and got picked up by there. Had finished the season there, played there the next year, and then um, I didn't know if I was going to continue on. Kind of plateaued out, and so I ended up working at a bookstore up in Minnesota. And one night on a very cold Minnesota night, that not too many people were coming in, I was on the internet and I found randomly a team in Belgium needed a pitcher. I sent an email, and 2 weeks later, I was on a flight. And so played that year. I ended up being the MVP of the league, and we won not the championship. They have like a single elimination tournament. Soccer has this where all the divisions play together, and it's a unique little tournament. We ended up, it's called the Belgian Cup. We won that. And then the next year came back and decided, I could still do it at the pro level. I had my best year with the Explorers, and then the next year started off hot, and then just something happened where just arm just kind of lost. I got something, dead arm or something, and then realized, yeah, I should move on, and so I ended up playing town team ball a little bit. Went back to Europe a little bit. Played in Germany, and then when I moved out to Seattle for work, I ended up playing on a team. We played down in Wichita, Kansas, which is the NBC World Series is a big tournament at the end of summer for a lot of different college teams, and did really well there. We faced a 2-time defending champ, but I put our team, gave them a chance to compete in there, and from there, I actually the other team's coach recruited me to play on a team that went down to Cuba, and played 10 days against their exhibition team. So like Yosmani Tomas, the Gary L brothers, faced them all down there, and then was done for a long time, and then I started playing again the last 2 summers.
Yeah, you took like a 12-year break?
7-year break.
7-year break. You're a couple years younger than me, by the way. I'm March 6th birthday. You're March 4th.
Yeah.
You know, so
Pisces. See, we're similar.
Something. Well, after your career ended, what'd you do then after you know, and it does seem like, by the way, if you want to keep playing football, if you want to keep playing baseball, if you want to keep playing basketball somewhere in some town for $100 a night, there's a place, or for free, right? There are places that you can go to. Same with golf too. Like, you know, these little, you find a way to try to keep making it at some point.
Yeah.
Right. Those doors just sort of dry up and you go, you know, I can't do this forever.
Right. Well, the thing that initially stopped me from playing baseball was you get to be mid-30s and it's hard to find someone to play catch with.
Yeah.
You know, like your friends, if they're athletic enough, they're usually have kids or moved on from baseball or something. And it was one of those things. But anyhow, I love it. And like the last 2 summers have been probably I don't have the velocity I used to have, but as far as like command stuff and just knowing how to pitch, I've been the most dominant I've been in my entire life. And so
when you get older, and occasionally I go play tennis, and I'm so much more strategic now, and I don't have to work as hard.
Yep.
And I feel like I'm actually better, even though I don't even play tennis very much. And I played tennis all through high school. So there's the aspect of like taking the time away, also letting your body sort of mature and understand itself a little bit better.
Yeah.
Have more an internal conversation to, like, you know, not try to throw it as hard as you can, or try to throw some crazy sidearm curveball on a 3-2 pitch just because it's going to be like the greatest thing anyone's ever seen, right? Things you do when you're like 16 to 17 years old.
Well, what really got me into the last few years is during the pandemic. I mean, I probably had a few too many whiskeys or whatever on a Saturday night, and I just went down a rabbit hole on YouTube, and what kids have access to now, I am so jealous of. I mean, just the phone, just what you can do, just recording yourself. I mean, we played in the VHS era, so you try to press pause to like look at mechanics, and it's just
my highlight tape that I sent out to colleges, and I had one of my Iowa State coaches say it to me a few months ago. It was a VHS made like with probably 2 VHS players hooking them up together and press and record and play at the same time. It was one of the worst things I've ever. I cannot imagine if my parents still have it. But with that, that was just before this sort of digital era, and as someone who occasionally works with college and high school quarterbacks, I can attest to how much further along the mechanics of throwing a football, the mechanics of just movement in general, any sport, all the movements, basketball, golf, hitting a baseball, throwing a football. There's just so much science now of maximizing whip and maximizing torque and maximizing that with control. And it's completely different than, you know, I didn't have my high school quarterbacks coach was like my older brother, who was like, I think maybe you should try that. Like it came out pretty good that time. I mean, it wasn't a thing, you know. God bless my high school coach, but he was an offensive lineman in high school and a small college, and so you just don't get that in the super small towns, and that's completely changed, and these kids have so many more advantages in that way from the magic of science and data. And cameras that can slow things down to go, you know, if you just do this a little bit, and when you could see it, you have a better likelihood of being able to do it. It's very much, I'm a big believer in that. And I try to do it with my kids sometimes, but like, if they would actually just see me doing things, that's probably better than me telling them, this is what you're supposed to do.
Right.
A little parenting 101 lesson there. So your baseball career ends.
Yeah.
What did you have in store after that?
I worked well. Um, I always thought about law school, and so I worked as a paralegal initially. Um, I worked at a couple great law firms, and one of those things where you just kind of find a niche where, and about the time I thought about going to law school was 2008 with the economic crisis, and so I just really found this path. Working in e-discovery, working in litigation, working on trials in civil litigation, and I really enjoyed it. And so that brought me up to Minneapolis, brought me out to Seattle, and just kind of worked all across the nation doing that. And then when 2016 happened with the election, I wanted to do more, and I didn't know what that meant. And one of the biggest inspirations to me is my grandmother. And I went to visit her at Thanksgiving, and she wasn't doing that well. And the last thing she told me was, "You need to move back to Iowa, and you need to take care of our farm." We rent our farm out to a family friend, so I wasn't going to hop on the tractor anytime soon. But um, it is just one of those things where just a lot of things came together. And then when I moved back, I just found this opportunity to run for Congress, and that's kind of how my political career started.
Did you have thoughts that that was what you wanted to do, to run for Congress or to be some sort of representative, whether it's a local level or a state level or a national level? I mean, what did you have that thought when you were young at all, or was that in your
No,
family, or you just decided that you wanted to run for
it
Congress, one of 435
yeah,
Congress men and women
yeah.
in the United States government? That's a pretty big swing on your first attempt.
Yeah, definitely naive. But the thing was, like, the first law firm I worked at was pretty political. There was a lot of people who actually worked there, like the current Secretary of State. I met from there. One of our friends in our core group ran in the Minnesota Third. So I got a little bit of a flavor for it, but not like it was just kind of trial by error. It was it was it was one of those things where, like, I mean, it sounds so crazy now to look back and think about it, but, like, I had a pure vision of what I really wanted to do, and ultimately, like, Winnebago Industries are made in the district. I just wanted to buy a used Winnebago and just go around nonstop and see if I could do something different.
Yeah.
And we ended up in 2018, we ended up moving the needle 24 points, which is the third most in the nation, and just really had a special moment in time. And I mean, a lot of it comes from the night before the election where we got to play hoops.
Yeah, yeah.
If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't
I
have gotten
think
the turnout.
thousands of 18, 19, 20, and 21-year-olds at the Lead Rec Center on, was it in February? I'm not even sure. It was the middle of
No, it
winter. It
was
was terrible
November.
weather.
November,
November. I'm
actually.
sorry. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, of
yeah,
course, November.
yeah.
It was terrible weather. It was like cold and rainy, and it was dark.
That was
Really
so fun though.
early.
Like the whole. So I mean, it's stressful to run for, especially like federal office, and like just the grind. I mean, that was like 16 months in the making, and I couldn't even ask. I mean, that whole election cycle was pretty special for me. But the night before, what you can control is so little, and so I was just trying to find something that can relax me a little bit. And playing hoops, I mean,
Yeah.
will always
Well,
be that.
I'd say let's do that again, but I'm concerned that even though it's only been like 5 years, or wait, it's 2018. All right, yeah, 2018.
Yeah, that was 2018. Oh
That I'd
wow.
blow out my Achilles.
Yeah.
I had a buddy blow his out from high school playing tennis. I haven't played
Mm,
basketball much in a while. I feel like that was bound to happen. Did you decide to run because, you know what, I just want to run for Congress, or was there a certain individual that you want to run against that you're like, you know what, someone has to go after this guy? And when I say this guy, I mean Steve King. Steve
yeah.
King, longtime congressman from Northwest Iowa, who for years, I guess, depending on who you talked to, right? Because everyone has their interpretation of words and what they
Yeah.
mean and history and all those things. But from some people's perspective, could call him, you would say, racist things
Mhm.
that more on a national level, that these stories would get out to people in other parts of the country, Chicago, New York, LA, and they'd be like, wow, this guy, cannot believe this guy
Yeah.
said that. And he has said other things in the past, and was just sort of like running against him to try to take away some of his power or take away his ability to say those things?
There's
Big in your decision to run.
there's two reasons. One, I mean, obviously, I disagree with what he was and what he stood for and a lot of things, and it was one of those things where he would make national news by saying something inflammatory, and I would have people, I mean, you know this, as like Iowa State has alumni all over the nation, and University of Iowa, and just Iowans are all over the nation. And people where I'm at, they're like, "Oh, is that you? Is this what you guys are?" And I was like, "No, that's not us."
Yeah.
And so part of it was 100% wanted to just like do something different, and run a decent campaign against him. And so that was part of it. But the other part of it too is, and it picked up more and more as I drove around, in the RV and just um, talked. You just see all these towns that I just remember so well from my childhood, and a lot of them are just they're not what they used to be. And streets are struggling, and just, we didn't bounce back from the 2008 economic crisis. And here he's saying all these crazy things, but at the end of the day, you're not taking care of your home either. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of the two uh, ways of that I kind of wanted to do it. And so and it's just a lot of things lined up for it. It was it's I just remember actually this ties into the lead center as well. So I laid it out for my parents. My parents, like, they've always supportive in my sports and everything. And my mom was very skeptical. She's like, I don't think you should do it. And so I'm like, Dad, what do you think? And my dad goes, and he tells the story about at the Iowa games. We were 11 and under tournament, and we were in the championship game against Jamie Burrows, uh, and Joe Burrow's other stepbrother, I think it is. Yeah,
Yeah. Or
yeah.
his brother.
Okay, yeah, brother,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
So they're ahead. I think they must have been ahead by one or something like that. My dad calls a timeout with 30 seconds left, and we're all 10-year-olds, or maybe it's a 12 and under, and we're all 11-year-olds. I can't remember what it was, but like we're all 1 year below except for two players, and the two players, John Klein went to Creighton, and then Kyle Galloway went to Iowa. So we had two stud uh, players at that level. So my dad draws up a play to make it to one of those two guys to get the final shot. But then as we leave the huddle, he goes, "If you get an open shot, shoot it." So I'm passing the ball in. I pass the ball in and pass the ball back to me, and I'm at the top of the key, and nobody's guarding me. And all I can think of is, if you get a good open shot, shoot it. So I shoot it, and my dad yells, "No!" And then it swishes, and everyone's like, "Yeah!" But then we have to play 30 seconds of defense. But we end up winning the game. And my dad goes, "Ever since that moment, I've known never to doubt you." And
Yeah.
so my parents ended up being very supportive of my campaign. But it was definitely different for our family. It was different. Like, nobody has ever done anything like this.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was outside of my shell. I used to go around telling folks, I hate asking for money and I hate public speaking. So obviously I decided to run for Congress.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's hard to try to comprehend what that experience would be like.
Yeah.
I have two wonderful parents, and we're huge, again, like my biggest fans, just like yours. And my dad coached basketball when I was on the early travel teams of 1992, one, whatever it was, middle school. And yeah, there's nothing like parents. There's
Yeah.
nothing like parents to teach you the ways, inspire you, motivate you, give you opportunities, and really just support you. And a lot of times to talk to, of like, you're not sure what to do. And they
Right.
just have all that knowledge and experience and wiseness, just literally by being 20 or 30 or 40 years older than you. So,
Right.
yeah, parents are unbelievable. Something I want to get back to earlier, you said, by the way, we talked about Steve King, and what you said is, that guy, he does not represent us, right?
Yeah.
His words, but he's a representative.
I know.
And that's the hard part. I hear that a lot in American politics, of like, hey, that person said that, but he does not represent us, or she does not represent us. But like, no, they do.
Yeah.
They do, unfortunately. And if they didn't, you would have somebody else, anyone else in office. And so I feel like that's one of those things that gets said in politics, or gets said, not necessarily in politics, actually just gets said in everyday life. Like,
Right.
Those shootings don't happen in this town. Well, no, they do. They happen in any town.
Right.
And we'll get to those types of conversations here in a second. But, he did represent the Northwest part of the state. And I don't know people from that part of the country. I'm from Eastern Iowa, and there's a lot of similarities there in a lot of ways. And, I grew up in a small town of 6,000 people. So my parents were the ones who, I guess, I shouldn't say got me involved in politics, got me caring about politics.
Yeah.
I think that they just, to be aware of what is going on around the world, to be aware of what was going on in your state, to be aware of what's going on in your county, down to, I went to a meeting one time at the county courthouse, basically, City Hall, and they were discussing spraying like pesticides and herbicides or whatever in ditches around the county to kill off all the weeds and the this and the that. And of course, my parents and their friends, they all show up, 30 people in this room, saying, listen, those are habitats for animals. What's the point? Why are we doing this? For what reason? I mean, and of course it rains, and that goes right into our water system. Like, why are we doing this? And so that, I guess you maybe call that political activism, but it was caring at the local level and carrying that all the way up to the like international level of like caring about Ukraine and Russia right now, caring about these things, knowing you can't do a lot, but caring is the first step.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And right. So anyway, just a thought about parents when you were discussing that with your parents and sort of how they got you motivated to get into this thing. Well, you lost to Steve King by 2 points. But you by 3 points, but you're so close that the Republican Party said, we're not running this, or he ran, but 3 or 4 of the people ran. He got beat in the primary, and then you lost, of course, in the general election 2 years later in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was like, I'm out. I don't want, I don't want to do politics.
But in some ways it was like mission accomplished. And I'm not sure how much people said that to you, but for me, again, the first time I met you wasn't like, man, this guy, JD Scholten's the greatest guy ever. It was more of like, I don't know this guy, but he seems to be better than that guy over there. So for me, mission accomplished. Congratulations. And I, as an Iowan, lived in that state for 23 years. I appreciate getting him out of office and into his retirement world and whatever he's doing. I'd like to think that this guy is doing a little better than him. And it just seems like he's saying less thing. I'll tell you that,
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those, it's a weird victory. I'll say that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the way life is, though. I mean, you get that with like, as a parent, I have losses all the time that I know are like little victories because something happened in there that maybe sparked their mind, So anyway, you stay in politics, though. You don't jump. Well, you actually should say you got out of politics for a minute, didn't you? You started like a nonprofit maybe where you were helping families.
I did an earned income tax credit nonprofit in between the election cycles, and then I worked at a think tank and a rural super PAC for a little bit of 2021, and then I was looking at jobs to just get out of politics completely, and that's when Representative Chris Hall, who represented Sioux City for 12 years, called me up and said, "Hey, I'm not running for re-election. You should run for this position." And I initially told him no. I go, "I'm good." But then at the Capitol, like that I slept on it a couple nights, and that's when they started attacking the teachers last session. And my grandmother was a 5th grade teacher, and I was just like, that's just unnecessary. And so we got bigger issues than doing that type of crap. And so I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And so ran unopposed, which nobody told me that was an option. That's cool.
Yeah. If you're going to run, I think that's the best way. I don't know. I felt very good about a buy in some sort of test tournament when I was a kid.
Exactly.
I earned that.
Yeah. I put a lot of miles in for that. So, but no, and it was great. And so just we're about 3/4, maybe a little bit over with the state legislature this year, and it's been interesting. I'll say it's definitely an honor to be there. It's not always pleasurable to be there.
Yeah.
Being a freshman, things are stacked up against you a little bit, and then being in the minority makes you feel like you got a double whammy. And so you take the wins when you can, but it's a lot of defense.
Yeah, I mean, all you can really do is, again, you're representing your
Division.
area,
Absolutely.
right? So you have to take into consideration what they would want,
Yeah.
and but you also take into consideration that they're not there every single day, and they're not seeing all these bills, and you
Yeah.
have to make choices for yourself,
Yeah.
right? And try to represent them with sort of your conscience, I feel like,
Yeah.
and in a tough role where, yeah, I think I saw yesterday that like 65% of states are fully controlled at the like
Yeah.
state
Yeah.
and federal levels. It's all one party. Either
Which
way.
which is very frustrating because, like, that's what even though, like, federally, it might have been like that for a while, like, in the state of Iowa, it didn't used to be, and the capital used to be, um, much more,
For
uh
purple,
yeah, very
I would
purple.
say. Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, I grew up in Eastern Iowa. It seemed like Eastern Iowa was very blue. I thought I
Mhm.
saw a stat a few years ago when Trump won in 2016 that Obama won by like 24 points in Jackson County,
Yeah.
and then he won by like 16 points. So he won, but not as much. And then Trump won by something like 19 points. I mean,
Yeah.
just a huge, massive swing, and and I think the state went from purple to pretty. It feels like to me pretty strong red
Yeah.
in a lot of a lot of different levels currently on the state.
I view it as, like, we're geographically between Wisconsin and South Dakota and Nebraska, and politically we're in between those right now there too. And so that's why I think, like, 2024 is such an important political year, especially for Democrats to try to win back some seats. I just that's of everything that I see that's happening. I think that's one of the bigger things.
Yeah. Do you? I want to discuss a few issues today. I went
Yeah.
on, did a Google search, and said, "What
Ooh.
are the biggest issues in Iowa?" And
Okay.
of course, all the biggest issues in Iowa. It's a Des Moines Register article.
Okay.
We're split up in sort of like Democrats, Republicans. Biggest issues are not the same. They are very like sort of
Oh yeah.
strongly different
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. As an example, Republicans, inflation,
Yep.
70% think that's like it's like a critical issue.
Yep.
Only 40% of Democrats think that,
Yeah.
right? On the reverse end, 70% of Democrats think abortion's a critical, issue right now. 69% gun policies is a critical issue right now. Climate change, healthcare. They look, and so it's just interesting to how every category almost of an issue. Some are the same, and then some are, it seems like, different. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about inflation. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts about inflation in general? Of course, what occurred? We had this pandemic,
Yep.
which, if we ever have anything like it again, I'd like to think that we learned a lot of lessons.
Oh, I
Both
guarantee we
sides,
didn't.
the whole country, our whole country failed miserably at
Yeah.
this thing. We
Yeah.
learned a lot. I don't think we'll ever shut down like that again. We'll
Oh my
never
goodness.
take our kids out of school like that again.
Yeah.
We have, of course, all these technologies that came from it,
Yep.
like what we're basically on is much
Yeah.
better and easier and all those things, right? So it changed the world for sure. But we came out of it with this massive sort of inflation issue. Tons of money were pumped into the entire system
Yep.
of money, and naturally you're going to have this inflation issue.
So
Go ahead.
yeah. So one of the ways where, and there's no doubt there is inflation, but I think one way that we're really feeling it is there's also corporate greed that goes along with that.
Yes.
And there's
54% of all price increases
yeah,
are due to corporate profits. They've actually
exactly.
increased their corporate profit. It's sort of like when gas prices go up. It's like we blame politicians. It's the gas. It's the oil
Right.
companies. It costs pretty much the same to make oil today as it did a month ago when gas prices were 50 cents difference. And it's
Right.
just them deciding when they want to jack things up. And there's political things in that
Right.
too, right?
Well, and I'm very much like one of my main things I talked about, and I think this is part of it. Well, if you go back to why I was able to do so well against Steve King is like there's the anti-Steve King thing, but there's also some things like antitrust and
Yeah.
talking about corporate greed and stuff that resonates with folks. Because you look at this, I thought the spotlight on the pandemic really like showed obviously like there's a lot of things going to it, but the economic side of it, I mean, with price of meat, consumers were paying the most they ever had. Farmers were not getting a raise. Workers were working in dangerous conditions. Meanwhile, all these meat packing companies, within a year or two before or after, they had all record profits. And so it just like there's so many things. It's get big or get out, and all these benefits for these huge multinational corporations. And we're just skewed as an economy right now. We're in just same way politically because it's all driving that
Yeah.
way. And so you add that, and then you add on inflation, and that's kind of the whirlwind. I mean, it's such a weird economy right now. You have tech layoffs, but then other
Tech
areas,
layoffs, though, the big numbers, but in reality, it's actually there's only so many tech jobs in this giant economy
right?
that we have, right?
Absolutely. And so, like,
They're just like they look like it. It's a fancy thing. I feel like the tech jobs, but you're right. I think it's
it,
I don't know. It's a
but
500,000 tech jobs or something like that.
right, but like other parts of the economy are doing really well, where some are not, and it's. But at the same time, everyone's feeling it at the grocery store. At least in Sioux City, I feel we are, and so it's just kind of a little bit of a weird economic time we're going through.
It is, and one thing that concerns me is this, housing prices rapidly increased again. We've seen that now
Yeah,
multiple times in our lives. I don't remember as a kid this occurring, but of course we
yeah,
all know what happened in the early 2000s with the tons of fraud and mortgage crisis that
yep,
happened in 7, 8, 9. And now it seems like the interest rates were so low for so long.
hmm
3%, 4%, 3.5%, various types of interest rates. I think better guardrails on the system that we didn't have in the early 2000s,
hmm
but still for a long time, very cheap money.
yep,
And people could go out and afford a house that was $500,000, three
yeah,
quarters of $1 million, $1 million. When those interest rates change from 3.5% to 6.5%, 7%, that vastly changed the amount of money they have to pay every month.
yep,
My concern, but the reason that they are increasing these rates, of course, is to try to slow down this housing market. Like this
yep,
is right, and the inflation, trying to sort of slow it all down. And then, of course, inflation and all those things. And my concern is, well, what happens when they get so high that there just aren't these transactions?
right,
Right? How many people out there are making their money off of the whole housing movement in general, and realtors, builders, construction people, developers, they love all that growth and that cheap money.
right,
But when that dries up and now it's not as advantageous, where are they going to get their income from? Where's the
right,
business going to be? And so
right.
that is my concern, and that is where we are. And I think they just raised rates the other day, and so I feel like that we're in this weird spot that feels uncomfortable to me.
Right.
It feels a little uncomfortable because the rates are so high, and then again, they're trying to slow all those prices down of homes, and again, inflation. And I just nobody really knows what this sort of 20-year experiment of crazy low interest rates since 9/11, what and trillions of dollars sent into the markets, in the country for whether it's pandemic or these or in 2007, 8, 9, all of the trillions of dollars put in the system with this 20-year low interest rate. I just don't know what's going to happen, and I think
Well,
it's like a
and
giant economic experiment. And I honestly, I'm a
right.
bit concerned about it.
No, I mean, a lot of people are, myself included. And one of the things we're seeing, at least here in Nebraska and Iowa, um, is, and that's part of this, is that the homes that are available are like 3 bedrooms or 2 garages. Like they're like bigger homes. What we don't have are newer, whether retirement homes or first year home or first like couples first homes. Like we don't have the smaller places to start off, and that's something that I'm really would love to focus on and help improve that, because you talk about workforce. you can't bring folks here if there's not homes available. And that's one thing that's holding back, I think, the Midwestern economy.
The Midwestern economy is interesting. I've lived all over. I've traveled all over. I know you've traveled, obviously, your fair share. Um, it changes you when you go to Paris,
Yeah.
not because of the high fashion and not because of the amazing food. It changes you to go, oh, I see what it would be like to not own a car.
Yeah.
I see what it'd be like to walk everywhere, take a train, a bus, a bike, whatever it might be, and to just not, and then all the expenses that we have in these cars.
Yeah.
Um, not just the car, of course, the gas, the insurance, the oil changes, the new tires, the accidents, all of it
Yeah.
adds up to a lot of money when people in Paris are like, we just go out to eat all the time. We we go to museums, we do all these other things with that money rather than paying for this thing to get us around. I've always thought that it has this big sort of health and economic aspect of our entire sort of system that we live in. But I think what people have always are looking for and would like to have to move back to Iowa, to move to any of these more Midwestern places, is more of a walking economy.
Yeah.
It sounds crazy, but just the ability to not have to get in your car all the time and how much healthier that makes you.
Yeah.
And I feel like happier that makes you, but it's not been a big, thought process in Midwestern politics and Midwestern business in general.
Right. And that's one thing that like the Sioux City Council I know is actually talking about, like, we don't want to go out anymore. We want to go up.
Yeah.
And I'm very supportive of that. And after I got done playing in Belgium the first time, I came back and my old '88 Celebrity got a crack in its engine, and I went 3 years living in Minneapolis without a car.
Yeah.
And I mean, waiting at the bus in -10, that's it wasn't the best, but like the buses always showed up, maybe just a couple minutes late or something like that. But like it was fantastic. Like when you had that, and that was before the light rail and everything like that. And so I think mass transit, what they have over there is very envious, and even just like what we can do with trains. Like I would love to have a train from Sioux City to Omaha to Des Moines, like just make us more mobile, but yet not having to focus on driving as much. And so hopefully it's not a pipe dream, but
Yeah, we all have our wish list. I
I
do
know.
feel, I do feel like though, you've had it with your traveling and playing in Europe, and your other travels. I've had it through my various travels. But this aspect of, yeah, just walking, and we've been
Yeah,
exposed to that, and most people have not. Most people
right.
just haven't lived in Minneapolis or Chicago or New York or Paris, of course, and they just don't know there's this other way of life, that there's that it might be, you might be happier, you might be
The
healthier, and they
cha-
just don't know.
the biggest change in my life is when I lived in France. I was there for a couple months for baseball, and I lived a block away from a grocery store where I was used to in Iowa going to the grocery store once a week, loading up the car, and with all these bags. There, I went daily, and
Yeah.
several times a day. Just got what I was going to make for my meal. And it changed my life.
Yeah. Well, it's also very different when it's just you versus
Right.
having
Oh,
like a family of
100%.
6 or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
So I'm
100%.
not saying you can't,
No, 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 no,
everyone should
no.
get rid of their cars and you can just live in Sioux City without a
Right.
car. I don't think that's probably possible.
Right.
But there is something about, as you said, density.
Yeah.
I feel like density and health, if it's done the right way,
Yeah.
with bike paths and bike trails, people want to be outside.
Yes.
I'm a big believer that people really I want to be outside all the time. Now, there's some people that just want to be in their house. They want to be hanging out in their cozy living room and their
Yeah.
kitchen, and they're inside people. I think a lot of people are outside, especially when the weather's nice. They want to have dinner outside. They want to go for a run outside. They want to read a book outside. They want to try to do like all the things outside. But in the Midwest, for generations, we've really had like an indoor, whether it's in your house, your car, and your business, but or whether you're basketball and wrestling, and
Yeah.
we have an indoor sort of economy because of our harsh winters,
Yeah.
right? But I think people prefer to try to spend as much time outdoors as possible, especially in their free time.
Well, they say like the countries that are the happiest people, that a study came out in the last week or so, and Finland's at the top, and I or was it Finland? I can't remember. Whatever it was, I remember
Yeah.
seeing one of the reasons is because they have so much outdoor activity
Yeah.
all year round. So,
My sister moved to Portland, I'm not sure, 10 years ago or so.
mhm.
And we were looking at houses, and her house that she ended up buying had this walkability rating. And I'm like,
Oh yeah,
what's a walkability rating? And just on the website, every house just based off of like commercial businesses that are nearby,
hmm,
or green space parks and
yeah,
things like that that were also within so many blocks. And of course, if you lived like a block or two from commercial and 2 blocks from a park, you'd have like a 90 walkability rating. What
yeah,
can you all do from just your house? And
yeah,
and I live in the suburbs, and suburban lifestyle, other than just taking a walk around your neighborhood,
yeah,
right? Which you don't really see anybody for the most part. Everybody gets in their car and then they drive to the next thing. So you end up being in your car a lot, and you end up being indoors a lot. And I think overall that can't be. We all know it's not very good for your health.
yeah. If I can walk to the grocery store, if I can walk to a coffee shop, someplace to get dinner, and if you have a neighborhood bar, that's that's good
Right.
for me.
You can get rid of DUIs by just walking home,
Yeah, so,
yeah. So, well, that would be something that I would love for the state of Iowa to really embrace. And
yeah,
you really can start that like the local level. I grew up in the country. I didn't grow up in a town, right? So we're not walking to town. We couldn't walk
yeah.
anywhere, but we were walking around our property. We had 10 acres, and our neighbors had huge plots of land, and so like that we were outdoors all the time.
I I do think there's gonna be a drastic, like, post what I view as a post-pandemic, world, because like, we realize we can work from almost anywhere, and there's gonna be
Yeah,
more remote jobs. So, what I would love to see as a state is, and this is something that maybe next session I'm gonna propose a few things, let's try to incentivize some of our folks to come back home.
yeah,
But then you see, like, what do people want? We want, quality of life stuff like that. The other part of it that last year, last March, I submitted, or I presented at this USDA conference at Yale University on regional food systems and how we're missing out on a lot of stuff here, where even though like we can produce all this massive amounts of food, at the end of the day, like, we import 90% of our food. I mean, we produce crops, but we don't eat all the
yeah.
corn or the soybeans and all that stuff. And so, making sure that we are, more resilient, because obviously we saw with the supply chain and everything, we become more vulnerable the more concentrated we are. And it just, I would love to see us kind of go into those type of worlds. So,
Talk to me about food in Iowa.
mhm.
All right, food in Iowa, agriculture. All right, I believe it's like the number one chicken state. It's the number one
Oh, yeah,
pork
yeah.
state.
Turkey's
It's
up there,
probably
eggs.
like two or
Yeah,
three with beef.
yeah,
Of course, corn it really is like the epicenter of agriculture and then food in
mhm,
America. It's the definition of big farming,
yeah,
right? The days of somebody on a 40 acres and making a decent life on that by just having some crops and having some animals is, I'm sure for a long time ago, there's very few of those left,
right,
right? Tell me about, or explain to me how you think the systems that we're currently in, the sort of
yeah,
the food systems that we're in, how you feel like that impacts all of us as Americans, right? Our food, our crops, and then our food goes everywhere else,
yeah.
right? And in our own country. How do you feel like that the style of business that we have in our culture, what type of impact it has on the rest of the country?
So here's one stat that I love to tell folks. When it comes to apple juice, 60% of our apple juice comes from concentrate from China. And think about the whole, like, economic, like, shipping all that over, and and then mixing it with the other stuff, or the water or whatever it is, and then getting it out. What happened if we had just like regional apple juice?
Yeah,
Like the way, like, we just it's and I realize, like, okay, we're not all of a sudden all going to grow carrots or stuff like that. Like, and I'm not saying that what I want to do is change the system. I'm just saying we have a potential to do an add-on to the system.
Yeah.
And that's the part where I mean, there's studies that show, and I think that also one of the things from the pandemic is people look at where their food comes from at a lot larger level. And so I just think there's a tremendous opportunity, and the infrastructure is just not there. And so when people start wanting to do this or that, it's not there to grow. And so I think there's a huge opportunity, if like where the government's role could potentially be is to start create that infrastructure, whether it's farm to school, farm to community college, farm to nursing home, farm to prisons or army, and just there's a lot of things where we could create that infrastructure, get farmers diversifying a little bit, or new sets, and change things a little bit, and then from there, just I feel things could really take off, and
Do,
that's
do,
what I would like to see.
do you feel like there's policies and things that can occur at the state level? There's federal things or state things, of course,
Yeah,
but the state level that can promote. Because here's the deal, as we all know, it comes down to economies of scale. If
yeah,
you make 1,000,000 chickens, all
right.
right, those chicken breasts you can make them fairly inexpensively compared to somebody that has 300 chickens down the road,
Hmm.
right? How do you balance that? Because there's no way to compete from a price standpoint, and we do know we're feeding hundreds of millions of people here,
Right,
right?
right.
But there's a local aspect that we can feed people locally. How do you feel like the state policies can have an effect on that?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've in doing this presentation we did a year ago with Ellen Rossman, who, if you're ever around Harlan, I'm going to say my favorite restaurant in the state is Milk and Honey. It's her and her husband's. A lot of it's organic, but a lot of it's farm to table, and just it's fantastic. So their breakfast and lunch, I would say. But yeah, if you happen to be between,
Milk and Honey,
yeah,
Harlan,
Milk and
Iowa.
Honey. Yeah. So if you be between Des Moines and Omaha, I would. It's only just a little bit out of your way. It's
I've been
worth
to
it.
Harlan, Iowa. I met you there,
Oh, that's
or I
right.
met you either
With
there or near
Booker.
there. Yes, with Cory Booker. Maybe I'll try to get him on the podcast sometime. That was
Yeah.
pretty cool. I have a chance to meet him. We actually got Justin Tuck on one of my old teammates of the Giants on a FaceTime call together.
Oh,
Was
that's
my,
right.
my random Cory Booker story. But a good friend of mine, Brody Darren, who played basketball at Creighton, he is from Harlan, Iowa.
Oh,
So
nice. Yep.
I know of that town. I know
Yeah. Great sports town.
the whiskey is not made in Harlan, but it's
Oh,
made Templeton is made
Templeton.
near Harlan, I
Yep.
believe, like within a half an hour or something.
So,
So yeah, I'm
but
fascinated by. Anyway,
well,
go ahead.
just so she works at food hubs, and she said one of the biggest things that we're struggling with is transportation. So she can grow stuff, but it has to be transported to Omaha, transported to Des Moines, and then if you just drop it off, that's a cost, not bringing anything back. And so finding out logistics in that, and the thing is, the state has a lot of transportational opportunities, because I believe that all liquor beverages is driven by state owned vehicles, or trucks and logistics. And so if there's space on there for stuff to move, and things stuff like
I
that.
mean, Iowa is we do a lot of things farming wise that people don't realize. Well, I know Iowans do. We're like a giant trucking mecca.
Oh, yes.
We're right in the middle,
Yeah.
right? So Interstate 80 going across, 35 north and south,
Yep.
Cedar Rapids, Des Moines,
World's
huge
largest truck
trucking
stop.
companies. Yeah, exactly. In the state of Iowa, you got to think that there's an opportunity there to somehow solve that issue with transportation in
Absolutely.
this more sort of local farm to table type food system.
Yep. So
What are some of the other bills that are coming up in the state of Iowa? I know one you have.
yeah.
And
So
let's talk about that right now. Major League Baseball blackout bill. Is that what we're calling it? What is this? What is this bill called? And tell
yeah.
me about it.
So uh I apologize. I forgot the name, official name of it, because it doesn't have a catchy name or anything. Because the state cannot go after a specific company, and so I know we couldn't use MLB TV. So it's basically the goal. The whatever the bill is, it's to stop Major League blackouts from happening in the state of Iowa. Because if you buy a subscription to MLB TV, you are blacked out of 6 different markets, and Iowa is the number 1 state that is affected by this. And so, it just
So, like, if they don't sell out a Cubs game, you
yeah.
can't watch a Cubs game. If they
Well,
don't
it's
sell
so baseball's never had this kind of same issue as NFL, where like blackouts because of tickets, because there's so many games and like in Sioux City, I'm not going to wake up and go to Milwaukee uh, for whatever reason. But the thing is, it's the regional broadcast systems, and they are the ones that have these agreements with the teams. And then, but Major League Baseball has the authority to go oversee them. And so, right now, we actually Major League Baseball came. Two of their representatives from the commissioner office came to Iowa yesterday to meet with me to talk about this stuff, and they're I will say that they will be on the path. We both have the same goal. We want to expand the game. We want people to watch the games. They get it, but it's not happening. And so, from where I stand, I think they need a push, and so that's what this bill is about. And that's kind of my focus around it. And to be honest, I've gotten so many people. I mean, this started when I started tweeting about just how frustrating it is, and I started seeing people on my social media who I've never seen before. I'm like,
you
okay,
have found a nonpartisan issue.
exactly.
Doesn't seem
But
like it. The love of sport.
right, absolutely.
Can
And
you
then
explain to me why
yeah,
the Major League Baseball and or these teams would think by not showing their games in the state of Iowa that somehow they're going to, in the long term, create more profits for themselves?
so here's the reason is that they want you to buy that regional network along with MLB TV. And by doing so, then you have to buy multiple subscriptions. So like bars have to buy MLB TV, then they have to buy the Cubs, the Marquee, whatever they are, and then the Twins are Valley North, and so they want you to buy all those things.
Hmm.
And it's my understanding that those regional networks are a dying industry. They were peaked a few years ago, and now they're starting to come down. And so I think there's an opportunity for whether it's MLB, a third party, or whatever, to buy them up and to wrap it up into something that's
One package.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's my hope.
I grew up, my dad's from Chicago.
Yeah.
Jackson County is over by the Mississippi River. It's the eastern part of the state. Cubs fan growing up.
Yeah.
Cared about the White Sox because my dad was from Chicago. So he was a Cubs fan, but it was sort of like, I guess I was sort of a White Sox fan too, for a hot second. The St. Louis Cardinals had a radio station in Maquoketa that played KMAQ, that played all the Cardinals games.
Yep.
So we got to listen to those in the afternoon. So we definitely a big Cubs, Cardinals. Everyone was pretty much those two teams.
Yep.
Then I go over to Ames, Iowa, to Iowa State, and it's like, oh, people are a lot of Twins fans over here, Central State, or Kansas City Royals were 3 hours away.
Yep.
So you definitely had something I didn't realize, of course, in Eastern Iowa, that people were fans of the Twins in North Central Iowa and right in the western side of the state. But I wouldn't care about probably the Cubs or the Cardinals at all if I didn't have the free chance to listen to them or watch them. I just wouldn't have, right? And I know we live in a different world.
Yeah,
but that's how I got into baseball, and I don't know how. Right. I feel like your kids are not going to be into it as much if they don't have a chance to watch it.
I could probably name almost every player on the early '90s Cubs, the Atlanta Braves, because of TBS, because we had access to it, and that's the big thing. And for me, baseball has given me so much. Been able to play, travel around the world, got an education in college from it. And so I want to make sure that when the next generation has an opportunity to have success like I did. And so, and it starts from just watching the game. So.
Again, I was a Cubs fan, but I'm going to say mid to late 80s, the St. Louis Cardinals starting lineup. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Terry Pendleton at third.
Yep.
Ozzie Smith at short, Tom Hurt at second, Jack Clark first, Willie McGee in center, Vince Coleman in left. And either Andy Van Slyke in right, And then the catcher,
Bernansky was there for a little bit too.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That's that's pretty good. I can't remember who the catcher probably was. One guy put
Tony
his
Pena.
Tony Pena put his
Yeah.
leg out to the side.
Yeah.
Had his own style when no one was on base.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are great baseball teams. The Midwest
Absolutely.
loves baseball. Iowa's a great baseball state. I loved the fact that in high school that I had 4 seasons.
Same.
Loved it. I would not trade my experience for any of what's going on now. I know that
Yep.
like it's different now. And it's more competitive, and because so many kids are in one sport. But I played football in the fall. I played basketball in the winter. I played tennis in the spring. Went out for track my senior year as well. But we had summer baseball.
Yeah.
And you started usually a couple of games at the end of the school year, and then you played into the summer, usually done, after July 4th or something like that.
Yep.
But I just love, there's something about playing in the warm summer nights
Yep.
that I couldn't imagine playing spring baseball or fall baseball like they do in these other states.
I don't know how they do it in Minnesota. They play, they're playing baseball, spring baseball right now.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
What is on tap? What is the upcoming schedule in the state of Iowa for as far as politics and as far as what's going on at the Capitol?
Yeah, so we this week is our second funnel, which means that if things don't pass this week, then things are kind of dead. And not to say that they're completely dead, but like 99% dead or 90% dead. And so then from here on out, it's going to be the main focus is on the budget. And so April, the sessions goes until 110 days, which is late April. But that's just a suggestion. Hopefully, things line up so we don't have to go too much longer.
Now, is the Iowa budget like a 2-year budget? Is that or is it every year?
I believe it's every year.
Yeah.
And so it's my first time going through it. So
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. Talk to me about how you think sports in general has been something that has impacted you, but also impacted the way you want to be a leader in the state of Iowa, representative of Sioux City, and how do you think sports has affected you?
I think sports has been the perfect thing that brought me to this moment of being in politics, because like at the end of the day, we're all Iowans. And so like Team Iowa, that I think about it in that way. And it's one of those things you got to work with people from all different backgrounds, all different parts of the state, people who didn't grow up here, and all different ages as well. And so when I'm on I'm on economic development and technology, and so like talking about some of the stuff, whether it's ransomware or cyber security bills or stuff like that, and some of the other folks may not be as well consumed in that as I am. And so it's one of those things where like sports has brought people together for a common goal. And I think that's one of the things of trying to get stuff done in the Capitol is, at the end of the day, we're all Iowans, and trying to do the best we can for Iowa.
At the end of the day, we're all Iowans, all right? Or I grew up an Iowan. Yeah. You're an Iowan, right? We're all Americans. We're all humans.
Yep.
But answer me this: how come if we're all sort of in this thing together, we can't solve this out of control gun issue in America? And when I say gun issue, I mean where guns are killing people. Guns are ending up in schools, shooting 9-year-olds, and there's outrage, and then it goes away. And there's another one, and then it goes away. There's another one that goes away. If we're all in this together, how come as civilians we can't solve this issue?
So I think our founding fathers did a good way of checks and balances in the nation and in the pillars of government, both federal and local, or federal and state. The one area that has been, I don't know, I'm not the best wordsmith, but has been ruined by all of this is money in politics. it is absurd. I mean, even in my congressional campaigns for 2 years, I raised $3 million, and then for a job that's uh, I don't know what 120 or 160,000 a year for 2 years, and then you have to do it all over again. And so what I've realized, and especially when it comes to the federal issue, like this happens to be mostly a federal issue, um, the amount of time when you're out there, you spend most of it fundraising more than you do constituent services, more than you do anything else. Even just going those, if you ever watch like those big hearings and the investigative things, and they um, like all the members are not there all at the same time. They're in and out, and they get their 10 minutes, they do their thing, they leave, and either they're going to other meetings or they're going to fundraise. And that's what the majority of folks do out there.
That's the lifestyle.
That's the lifestyle. And so like so what's easier to do? Is it call people and get money from them, or is it to take a huge check from a lobbyist? And that's where we're at. And so if you have money, money talks, and you see that. Why do we not? Or why are we the wealthiest nation in the world and don't have healthcare better than what we do now? I mean, pretty much every community in Iowa has somebody that a GoFundMe account to help pay for someone's medical costs, or a pancake breakfast, or a box at a gas station to put some coins in. It comes with guns. It comes with like the banking industry, like Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah.
The banking industry changed the rules after
How regulations work. Who
Yeah.
decides what the rules and policies are? It's the money.
Right.
The
Well,
money decides.
and that's the number one thing I'll say at the state that was I didn't know about coming in, and like almost every night. In fact, right now there's a event that a group puts on, and people love to host different things, and not all of them are bad. Most of them are really um, um, non-controversial or anything like that. But there's all these groups that have either a breakfast or a dinner or have drinks, and we go to all these things, and I have a feeling that like, okay, I may not be here in 10 years, but all these special groups are. So then who's running this state? And the amount of bills that we have where it's just like changing from 90 days to 30 days, or just like little pieces, like, and ultimately all those things add up, and it ends up favoring companies.
And many times it seems like it's outside money that
Oh yeah.
comes in, and it figures out in various states, and every state has various issues that are important for different reasons, but it comes in and then has this giant impact on some issue that you may not think is a big deal, but that starts then become like the bell cow of the rest of the country, or
Right.
something like that. Like, hey, this is what they're doing in Iowa, or this is what they're doing in this state. We need to have those same rules. If it was up to you,
Yeah.
I guess I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
If you could just change 2, 3 rules in the gun conversation,
Yeah.
that you think would minimize these mass shootings, minimize school shootings, and just minimize deaths in general. Children it's the number one cause of death for children.
Right.
It's not cancer. It's not car accidents.
Right.
It's not drag shows.
Right.
Incredibly. It is guns. What are the 2 or 3 things that, there is no influence in politics. It's just like what you would consider common sense. How do we make this better? I'm going to say this.
Yeah.
I grew up with a grandfather that we hunted and trapped muskrats and raccoons.
Yeah.
And he shot deer, and he shot squirrels, and he shot rabbits, and he had a bow. I walked into his living room, and he had deer legs that were like with the hooves, with the guns across. Like, he was the definition of like a hunter, trapper, fisherman, right, type of guy.
Yeah.
He didn't have an AR-15.
Right.
I don't even think he had a handgun. He just had these various, shotguns and rifles. So I've been around guns.
Right.
I understand the value there. I also understand. I have children. I have myself. I understand the aspect of protecting oneself. All
Right.
right. Looking into the details of the Second Amendment, which the hard part about our Constitution is that it was written, 250 years ago. And how can you be thinking 250 years ahead
Right.
and how the world changes, right? But what are the couple of things that you think would be like on your wish list of, man, if we did that, it could have a big impact?
Well, to me, it still goes. Number one thing is campaign finance reform. If we had a way where, and like, there's a lot of different solutions to this, but none of them are going to happen anytime soon. Um, it's as long as people need money for campaigns, the NRA is going to control a lot of this stuff, um, and that's the sad reality. And anytime there's school shooting, the left, uh, uh, rightfully so, gets super upset, and and social medias just blow up and everything, and then that results actually every time it's shown that every time that happens, then gun sales go up,
Yeah.
and so it's just this cyclical, awful thing that we're in right now. Um, at the end of I mean, you can ban stuff. It just there's common sense stuff that we can be doing, and the fact that even just like universal background checks,
Yeah.
like that's not like uh, that's over 80% of Americans want that. And
Yeah.
when 80% of Americans want something like that and they can't pass, it's
That
mind
means
blowing.
that means the system's not I know it's
Absolutely.
we're in a we're in a republic, representative democracy,
Right.
type of thing, but it doesn't feel like the will of the people is being taken into consideration at all.
Exactly.
Just basically the profits of companies that of course make money by as many guns as being sold as possible.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's their industry. That's their call to life is to have as many guns out there as possible so they can make as much money as possible. What are your thoughts on the AR-15 style weapons? These, and I want to and add that to your 18 years old once.
Yeah.
I was
Right.
18 years old once.
Right.
Invincible
Yeah.
on the football field, running around, right, getting hit here and there. But in reality, as immature as I was probably more mature in some ways when I was 10 than when I was 18. You know what I mean? Like, I know you can vote,
Right.
but the ability to buy and own something that has serious killing potential
Right.
in massive amounts. Talking about the AR-15 and then the ability for an 18-year-old, 19-year-old to get one or I don't know 10 of these things if they can
Right.
afford it.
So so I mean, if you're 18, you can go into the army and you can train to have one, but you train to have that.
That's right.
And that's the thing that I just don't get is like, especially with these high power stuff. If hypothetically that there's Second Amendment folks, they'll fight tooth and nail to like, we have to have that. We have to have that. Well, okay, then like earn it, you know, like like have take a licensing or something that this like earn the right to have that then,
Yeah.
because I mean, kids I grew up with, we all know somebody that probably shouldn't have a gun, and it's just common sense. And so like let's let's just not let anybody just come off the street and buy one. It's just it's nuts how accessible it is, and it shouldn't be harder to vote than it is to get a gun. And it feels like that's the direction we're heading in.
What's interesting to me is, yeah, again, at that volatile stage in our lives, right now, as we know through science, that between the ages of like 16 and 24, our brains are like the most volatile. We make
Yeah,
really, really bad decisions. A lot of these gun issues do seem to occur in that like 18 to 22 range.
yeah,
Um, I understand that, the aspect of having a car is not in the Constitution. right? So it's like, oh, you get a car at 16, you got to take a class and you got, prove that you can drive and all, all these things, right?
Yeah.
So there's a challenge there, but I do agree. I, as a car driver, am much happier that everyone on the road, most people have, I guess, taken some sort of class and at least proven themselves a halfway knowledgeable person to also be driving a car, because those things are incredibly dangerous as well. Right. And so I feel like as a citizen, I'd be more, I'd rest a little easier knowing that all these people out there who have these high powered rifles have taken some sort of class to know how to use them, store them. If they're even like in the mentally if they're mentally capable to actually have one of the things that they should have one of these things. I feel like there's a bit of a filter system there. Like, hey, you take this class and we realized you're a psychopath. Like, maybe you shouldn't get your license after the end of the class, like, and I get it. The Second Amendment, it's hard to go through this thing that is like, that was made 250 years ago that people don't want to move from. Right. But really the people are the profit centers of it, right? Which are those corporations, those companies that make a money off it. So there was always that never made sense to me. And the high powered, or not high powered, the high poweredness of them, right? These don't, like, as my grandpa was hunting, when he shot the animal, he didn't want to destroy all the meat. He didn't want to like have this thing explode inside the animal. He wanted to like shoot through the right spot. So hopefully it just dropped on, and it was the end of it. And then he could get 99% of the meat that would still be good. These rifles don't do that. They're so fast when they go through, they just destroy the people. My other thought was the magazines. Like, I get protecting your house. I get it. I get hunting. I get it. But like, why do you need all these shots? Like 30 shots or 31 shots in these like banana magazines that are legal. Like, why do you need that many to protect your house, to protect, to go hunting, sort of the various things that you want? Those things never made any sense to me. Of why, generally it was always like 6 bullets in a gun when you're like a handgun growing up, right? Like the old cowboy days, right? Like, how many, why can't it just be 6? And then if you have multiple of those cartridges, you have multiple cartridges. At least it's not 30 in a row. Like, this is just made for war. Right? 30 seems to me like that is made for war, and the high powered aspect of it.
And the thing that, I mean, in the last few years too, I mean, I love, let's say Jack Trice Stadium. Love going to games, but like, where people, they funnel you out, and some Yahoo can just, no training whatsoever, but wipe out a whole crew just like that. And like that's
it's unnerving.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
it's unnerving. And to me, handguns were always this, handguns can be concealed, right? You can walk into a Target, handgun. But this aspect of and that is like an extra element, again, that wasn't as obvious in 1776, that in 31 shots, in a cartridge. But I feel like those things, common sense to me would be, listen, if you're going to have handguns and these other types of guns, you need to take some extra classing for that. If you just need a shotgun because you want to go rabbit hunting or protect your house with just a shotgun that holds 4 or 6 shells, maybe you don't need all the classes and all the things. That's what maybe the founding fathers were thinking when they drew this whole thing up and created this whole experiment. Right. But instead we have what feels like to me just sort of a filterless system of get as many out there as possible, as deadly as possible, and then just let it loose. And it doesn't again, like I've traveled, other countries think we're crazy, and we are. They think we're crazy with all sorts of things, but this thing, more than anything, it completely blows their mind of how we have those types of guns, just in our neighborhoods, in our towns.
Well, at least we got universal health care.
No, we don't have that either. That blows them away too. That's another thing
I don't understand how we don't riot more in this country.
Well,
But
because
like
we
that's
ha
the thing is
I
because like healthcare, like this is, I mean, it's just a basic thing. Every other country has figured it out.
well, what's interesting to me is we pay taxes, other countries pay taxes too. Theirs
Yeah,
might be a little bit higher and some is probably lower,
yeah.
but they get a lot more benefits from their taxes that we don't get. So they pay we're all paying taxes one way or another.
When
What we have is, subsidies that go out to, food practices that aren't don't that make us unhealthy.
Mhm.
We have subsidies that go out to energy companies that make us, make the environment worse. Um, we don't have it going to to insuring people that get sick, right? Health insurance. It's I don't know. It's an interesting. We have of course this giant military that we sort
Right,
of are the world's police. That's where of course a decent portion of our money goes to. But it's not that people get all wrapped up in taxes, and it's like taxes high, taxes low. No one wants to pay taxes, but like, what do I get for the taxes? And it doesn't
right,
feel like as an American we're getting 30 to 50% back in various things of what I'm putting in there. And I
right.
think that's probably a big frustration that goes across both sides of the aisle.
Yep, I would agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, good luck to you in this next session. You're a
Thank you.
freshman. I remember
Yeah.
how it was being a freshman. You have no idea what's going on. You obviously don't know everything that's going on yet. One day at a time, one learning situation at a time. I wish you luck in your endeavors. Be true to the good.
Yeah.
I think that we all have various forms of what we believe in and as Americans and what's best for all of us and what's best for me and you and all these things, but trying to be true to the good and empathize with the people that you don't know and they're not like you and they don't look like you and their religion might be different than yours. And that empathy of trying to understand people's other point of view, I think will serve you a long way if you can try to keep an open mind.
Yeah. I like that. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Well, that is it. JD Scholten, thank you very much for coming on the Sage Rosenfels experience. Hope it was a good experience for you on the Iowa Everywhere Network. That is it today, folks. We'll see you next week.